Ok, estamos live.
How many people do you think will be here, roughly?
No, last
Maybe
week,
from 20 to 30 people, I think.
Okay, cool. Not some kind of huge intimidating number with like just so many comments and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we usually have to scroll back to the first comments, but it's not that big of a deal. So we are going to help you with that. You don't have to worry.
Let's just wait for a few minutes so people can tune in.
So is there like a waiting room, or are we in a waiting room?
We are in the waiting room, but we are also super live right now.
Okay. Can you see my Coke can collection?
Wow.
Wow.
Okay, that's the caffeine Coke.
So in Finland, you get 15 cents for each can you recycle, right? This is like, they cost about 80 cents, so it's almost a quarter of the price. So, and Finns like basically throw them on the ground, expecting homeless people to pick them up for them. So, like it's just an incentive to get rid of them. But I'm like, I'm keeping every one. And I keep them in my office until I've got about $10 worth. And then I go buy myself something special.
Yeah. Like a PSN membership card or something like that.
Yeah.
It's nice. Okay, I think we can start. There's already people coming. Boa noite, pessoal. Sejam muito bem-vindos aí, bem-vindas a mais uma edição do Metagame Speaker Series. É muito bacana ter todos vocês aqui. Obrigado pela presença. Tenho aqui Ivan comigo novamente para me ajudar com a discussão e a tradução enfim, e tudo que rolar aí nessa noite. Então, boa noite, tô vendo o Samir, Camila, Juliette, Léo, Leandro, boa noite, pessoal. Então, Tom, deixa eu fazer uma coisa correta aqui, que é abrir a bio dele, tá, gente? Peraí. Eu devia ter feito antes. Ok. Tom é um Senior Research Fellow. Tem uma palavra maravilhosa aqui em finlandês. Iliopistotuki. Tom, you have to pronounce this research fellow term in English. No Centro de Excelência de Estudos de Cultura dos Games, né? Game Culture Studies. E ele discute, ele faz pesquisa em videogames e tecnologias lúdicas com a ênfase no seu impacto e influência na cultura, particularmente nas áreas de política social, pedagogia e inclusão social. Tom tem sido um parceiro da gente por algum tempo já. Ele me convidou em 2018, 17, eu acho, 17, para ser chair de um dos tracks da DIGRA, né? A DIGRA, que é a maior e a mais importante associação de estudos em videogames do mundo. Nós, como eu falei há alguns dias no Twitter, nós agora estamos com um chapter da DIGRA aí, todo mundo está sabendo. A lista de discussões já está acontecendo e estamos muito felizes com isso. Sem muitas delongas, né? Fico muito feliz de todos estarem aí. Obrigado, Ivan, mais uma vez por estar aí dando essa força. E eu vou conversar com o Tom aqui e passar a palavra para ele. Tom, good evening, man.
Thank you very much for your welcome, Professor Fakang. And thank you very much, Professor Musa, for supporting translation.
Yeah.
Very happy and honored to be invited here to speak with Brazilian colleagues about my research on games. And just to start off with, you're probably wondering right now about what happened to all the barbers in Finland. And I have to confess, this is actually how I normally look. So there's that. At least this kind of distancing is giving me some kind of excuse to look normal. So if you could share my screen, please. I'm not sure if it's working right now.
I will, and I will remove myself and Ivan, and we'll be back once you finish it. Thank you, man.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Professor Musa. So this talk today is bringing together several threads that I've been working on around the issue of pornography and attention and games. And I guess that I've been studying games and porn now for maybe 5 years or so. And it's been really interesting to kind of track the development and history of the emergence of this kind of figure that's, a pornified figure, like the same way that like maybe a cheerleader or a pizza delivery guy is a kind of trope within pornographic narratives. So too now is this woman that plays games. Now, games also become pornified in various other ways. ID. Okay. Excuse me, folks. This is all for my safety.
Gente, é porque lá são 11h10 da noite, né? Então.
Okay, so I'm safe here with the security, and it's not someone else. I am using my office for the correct reasons. So just back to this point at hand, video games are pornified in a number of different ways, and these have all kind of intensified over the last several decades. So we see gaming kind of integrating the visuals of porn integrating the visuals of gaming. We see kind of social media and influencers and streamers crossing the boundaries between pornography and streaming, and various other things happening as well. So I guess what I'm getting at here is the idea of Rule 34, and probably some of you are thinking right now about Rule 34, which is sort of this internet rule that, if it exists, there's porn of it. And sort of like this is kind of, I guess, a truism, but also at the same time, it's important to actually think about in which kind of ways these ideas are incorporated into pornography, especially if we consider ideas like from porn studies like that pornography often is a kind of explicitly sexualizes narratives about power, and that also pornography, especially mainstream heterosexual pornography, often plays with ideas of male insecurity and kind of projects them onto other figures. So what I want to stage here is kind of an encounter between game studies and porn studies that recognizes and kind of sits within the current growth and importance of social media and streaming for video games and video game cultures. What I want to take you through is some of my attempts at concept building around the idea of hierarchies of attention in video games, specifically looking at this pornified gamer girl figure in mainstream heterosexual pornography. And I'm going to argue and try to demonstrate how gender hierarchies of attention shape how hegemonic ideas in gaming culture, which are informed by sort of a dominant heterosexual masculine kind of ideal, approaches key issues in gaming culture about changing power relations, especially around issues of material culture. So, I mean, I hope that this meme is also circulated in Brazil. I'm not 100% sure that this is actually resonating with anyone, but this idea of attention as a limited resource is something which has been kind of brought up and used to characterize the current epoch of social media kind of plenitude. And it's introduced by this person called Goldhaber, who describes, uses the attention economy to describe the age of information overload, and uses it to highlight that our concentration is intrinsically limited. And over the years that he's developed this idea in various ways, he's used it to describe the natural economy of the internet. And as the internet becomes more central, that the attention economy is what characterizes society as a whole. Now, when we're thinking about video games and we're kind of breaking down what happens when one plays video games, I'm going to argue that attention isn't just looking. In video games, the attention involves all the senses which are relevant. I guess smell is still not widely utilized in video games, but touch, sight, hearing, I suppose taste probably isn't very much either, but these three, and also this kind of bodily awareness, proprioception, sometimes called the sixth sense, is also engaged. That attention also suggests a kind of particular state of embodiment and a comportment, a way of holding the body, a way of moving, a way of looking, that integrates all of these senses into a readiness to act and respond to different things on the computer or console or whatever you're playing on. So there's various kind of other dialogues about attention, which kind of emerge from the manosphere, or this kind of regressive, conservative male area of the internet that's like characterized by misogyny and various other kind of elements, equally horrible, where pop kind of evolutionary psychology informs gendered relations. And one example is one which is very common in, I guess, like pickup artist culture and various other segments of the manosphere, is this idea that the way in which women's bodies are different from men is designed specifically from an evolutionary perspective, like this, to attract men's attention, to get attention from men, and that this can be enhanced by deliberately attention-seeking behavior, and that this kind of operational logic of kind of misogyny around women's appearance and kind of is the basic logic of slut shaming and rape culture. But you also see like kind of more sort of softer kind of articulations of this kind of nasty ideal in things like these images which I found in Playboy from 1981, where in an article about the emergence of arcade culture and so on, these two images were presented as kind of the core to, I mean, they encapsulate some of the issues about attention that were already arising 40 years ago or 39 years ago or something like that, where we see on the left a kind of this poor guy who's now deeply saddened by the fact that this woman is playing a video game and ignoring him, and he can't play the video game and he can't get attention from the woman. And we see a kind of microcosm of male fragility, like this kind of fear of being like becoming irrelevant. And then on the right, we kind of see like a much more empowered kind of fantasy of kind of being able to play the game and also play the woman. And it's sort of like plug into two interfaces, let's say, at the same time. And everyone's happy. So in my research on pornography and video games, this connection, I've gathered various data from magazines, television, social media, and Tumblr, and this set that I'm exploring now comes from this website called Xvideos, which is a tube porn site that hosts videos. It's been the largest or most visited porn website in the world for a couple of years now. The last time I was able to find how many hits it had per month was from last year, middle of last year, where it was getting about 3 billion hits per month. The site was founded in Paris in 2007 and is currently based in Prague in the Czech Republic. And the site that it kind of ousted as #1 porn site was Pornhub. So because I was doing this research at about the time that it became bigger than Pornhub, I selected Xvideos, just didn't know much about it. And I basically just did a probe. I did a search with Gamer Girl and just kept on clicking the links and downloading the videos until I had 258 videos. Now, most of these videos are edited cuts from much longer commercial videos, about between 6 to 8, 12 minutes, and 6 and 12 minutes long. But from the 258 videos that I downloaded, I actually only had images from 70 or cuts from 70 unique videos. So a lot of the movies I was downloading were just different cuts of the same film. So the data I gathered was the hashtags, information like the number of likes and dislikes. I got copies of the comments that were on each video, the URL, and I downloaded the video as well. So these 70 videos, I divided them into these kind of like, they're pretty useless categories in a way. but just for kind of simplicity, because I wanted to focus on, I guess, like mainstream heterosexual porn, this was like, I guess, as a kind of professional but quasi-gonzo, kind of quasi-amateur aesthetic. I divided them into that category and ones which were much more clearly made by the performers themselves, even though there was like quite a lot of aesthetic similarity. So 48 of them were from this kind of quasi-professional aesthetic, and 22 were more clearly amateur. So I eliminated those ones. And then in this professional sample, only 35 of the 48 videos featured women playing video games. So that's exactly half the sample. And then from that, 27 of them kind of featured the strong narrative structure, the interactive structure, which kind of highlighted a theme of attention and, I guess, the opposite of attention, distraction. So when something is like stopping you from being able to pay attention to something. So this kind of structure had 5 stages. So, you know, we start off and there's a woman playing video games. And then someone comes and verbally interrupts her playing. Then physically interrupts her playing. And then this interruption becomes non-reciprocated foreplay and the initiation of intercourse. And at some stage, the woman gives up playing video games because now it's become a traditional heterosexual porn film, which involves exposition, Y position, and so on and so forth for half an hour or so. I'm assuming people know about that. So in this case where it starts off with a woman playing video games, usually there's this kind of clear, what I'd call gamer girl iconography. You can see here in this picture from Extreme Gamer Girl. There's this kind of glasses, often conspicuously without lenses, fancy headphones, often with a microphone, not in this case. This time it has cat ears, knee-high or higher socks, and very important is this controller in the hands as part of the whole kind of setup. The crucial factor is this kind of the appearance of the clothing and so on, is this everyday domestic casual clothing, which kind of suggests a kind of want for domestic comfort and intimacy without necessarily being in public. It might be on the revealing side, but often it's not conspicuously undergarments. And there's a kind of consistency in this imagery around these American Apparel thigh-high socks, and in particular, yeah, oh no, I've already mentioned that. So it's often in a domestic setting, but it's often in a really impersonal McMansion type domestic setting, which is just like a lot of kind of fancy furniture and not really these kind of details that you might expect to see in a house that's inhabited. So even in a bedroom, they don't seem like they're very personal spaces. although sometimes there is a kind of superficial mess that's created for the drama around the gamer girl, like empty junk food wrappers or something like that, which that signals a kind of a lack of attention to her work or herself, which I'll get into in a moment. What's important also is that in this stage of the videos, this figure is giving 100% attention to the game, both with gaze and comportment, maybe interacting with someone over a mic or because they're next to them, talking about the game, but incredibly focused on a point off the screen. And of course, moving and holding herself and touching the controller in a way as if they were playing. And part of this expression is also showing a shift between different kinds of affective or emotional states. In particular, pleasure, a kind of joy and success and doing something right in the game, making something happen, and also moments of frustration, of annoyance and hindrance. And then at some point, the play is interrupted. And there's two ways that this can occur that happen within the sample. In some cases, a new person enters demanding attention from the gamer girl. So first, maybe sees that their high score is about to get beaten, or gets upset by bad language being used over voice chat, and or is upset because they are monopolizing the TV when they want to watch something more suitably masculine. And so you can see here that these are all very kind of fragile behaviors, all kind of motivated by the sense of fragility. And then there's a kind of major theme when the partner is upset because they're not paying attention to them. Like, so the game girl is damaging the relationship by playing video games, or in this kind of quasi-incestuous pornographic tropes of the sort of stepfather and stepbrother, that the gamer girl is accused of not doing her homework or not doing her chores correctly and playing video games instead. So she's paying attention to something that she should not be. Then in this other kind of trope where her play gets interrupted, a player who is co-present accuses her of being distracting. First, this figure focuses his attention on the movement of her body as she plays. So she's bumping him in some kind of way, or perhaps a part of her is bouncing or wiggling in a way which he finds appealing. And at some point, this turns into her being accused of cheating because she's deliberately distracting him. This then switches to a playful, physical interruption, where the gamer girl dismisses the interruption, like, hey, I'm just going to finish this level, I'll do it afterwards, or go away, I'm busy, sort of dismissal. And the person who's interrupting her then starts to touch her in order to get her attention. Now, this doesn't necessarily start off as particularly sinister. It might just be like a poke or a nudge or playful tickling, or a kind of joking, grabbing, take away her controller as a laugh. But it very quickly turns into sexual harassment, in that it becomes unwanted, intimate, or sexual touching, that she is telling the person to leave her alone when it's happening. So this then shifts into foreplay and sex. Her attempts to ignore her interrupter, and in this attempt to ignore the person, she totally focuses on the game and deliberately kind of blocks out the person. And while she's focusing on the game, the physical touching escalates to sexual touching and undressing, and the initiation of intercourse against her wishes. And so while verbal protests continue, she doesn't physically resist. And as this process continues, she shifts from responding in her affect and comportment to the game to the sexual touch of this intercourse part. And in this final stage, she gives up playing. She throws the controller away. She's distracted. She can't play anymore. So that the game is abandoned, and while she might play through various sexual positions, eventually it's totally abandoned. But in some cases, very few, 2 or 3, the gamer girl returns to playing the game immediately after intercourse has ceased. So what I'm suggesting here is that when gamer girls feature in pornography, the gendered power dynamics of heteronormative masculine gaming culture are explored in the narrative and in the structure of the initiation of intimacy and sexual activity. At stake for the game girl is this idea that they can actually perform the kind of attention which is required for mastery and participation in video games. And you can see that in some cases, a kind of there's people desire them to balance it with effective labor of being an attentive partner, friend, or daughter. And then also her gender also has a role in, is shown to have a role in distracting men from playing well. And that this is the kind of cause of some of the unwanted attention. And for some reason, this is kind of her problem. And that there's a kind of underlying tension that the idea of a woman taking pleasure in games kind of is somehow impossible and has to be tamed or turned into a kind of sexual pleasure. In the comments sections of these videos, there's a lot of critiques of the gamer credentials of the female performers. So this is also often played with, like, for example, the website Team Skeet has a playable low-tech game that it uses when it's doing gamer porn, which is sort of like a Space Invaders game, but or instead of spaceships, it's penises, which are kind of dropping down to the bottom of the screen. In the videos, performers will also have detailed online chats with their friends about the games, and in the comments, people will actually discuss the authenticness of their, the performance of the online chats. In other cases, there's a kind of ongoing joke about the controller not being turned on, like the light on the PlayStation controller not being there. So sometimes it's covered by tape or a sticker, and in other times there'll actually be a discussion about how it's a modded controller that had the light taken out of it to conserve battery power. So while these gendered power dynamics of attention kind of deny gaming as a space for women, and they also present the attempt to be part of that space as creating a kind of vulnerability that can be exploited by men. So it suggests that the heightened attention of gaming is not for women because women lack the right body capacities, kind of an essentialism about women. But overall, don't worry about that. So, whoa, excuse me about that typo. So now that I've talked about these videos, I want to just briefly move to connecting it to a few other issues going on in gaming culture. And then I'll wrap up. I'm not quite sure how much time I have left. Can someone just let me know? Okay, I think he said quite a lot.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. As much time as you need. Don't really worry about that.
Okay, cool, man. No worries. Thanks very much, Sean. So, let me just. So, on one level, there's the kind of representation of women in games and gamer porn, which relates to this kind of idea of attention and I guess like that video games have a long history of having exaggerated sexual dimorphism. So, women have much more exaggerated womanly features, men have highly exaggerated masculine features. And in some cases, there's a kind of element of conflation with the physical with the cultural. So maybe long hair starts to be part of the exaggerated traits that women will have. And we've seen so many debates in the last couple of decades about hair in characters. Well, maybe not that many, but like significant ones like how much processing power it takes to animate women's hair was used as an excuse to not include women in some game or another from Assassin's Creed series. And then there's a kind of investment in the presentation of women's bodies as realistic, as a test of verisimilitude, which has led to a kind of massive overinvestment in boob physics and butt physics, as engine designers kind of want different parts of women's bodies to mimic movement in an appropriate way. And one really interesting study by Mia Consavo kind of connects this kind of obsession with the movement of buttocks, for example, with this idea that men actually want to choose a woman avatar so that they can kind of obviously oogle or watch her move. They just like to choose women because they want to be able to look at their butts. Then there's a level where sort of video games take on a kind of a role in increasing the level of scrutiny and of the body, where the level of intimacy and detail and the feedback which they give to people starts to measure their comportment, their gestures, their touch, and how they look, and their kind of, in the case of the balance board, their posture and weight. If you look at this image here, I mean, seems like a very unremarkable image, but it's actually, to me, like a very deeply complex image where, I mean, there's a person standing on a Wii Fit balance board playing Wii Fit and having their body ultimately scrutinized, while this opens them up for a kind of surreptitious kind of photo that kind of catches this kind of moment in this kind of way, and then it can be circulated so we can see it as well. And there's kind of various questions that could be raised here about is she naked because she's taken off all her clothes because she wants to be, she's being weighed? Or is this kind of like more like a moment of intimacy between partners or something like that? That the context of this picture is lost, as far as I know. I just found it on a Tumblr, which was shared nude pictures of gamers. So in this sense, video games and gaming technologies can act to extend and enhance and enforce male gaze, kind of masculine mapping of space. Some people have even described them as male gaze simulators. Then there's kind of the social media dimension, social media platforms, where and streaming platforms, where there's increasingly uneven rules about how bodies are presented. I mean, the obvious one is it's okay for men to show their nipples, but it's not okay for women to show their nipples. There's also an increasing perception of uneven levels of scrutiny and treatment of men and women on these sites. And in terms of the increase of women streamers and so on, there's developed cultures of harassment, which even collate and share and kind of document moments where famous streamers have leaned forward too far, or wearing a short skirt or something like that, where there's sites like Thought Hub and YouTube Girls, or these kind of, which aggregate, I guess, like images of these women like they're celebrities, aka the Fappening kind of website, which also digs through any kind of hacks that they might experience and shares their OnlyFans images, if they have them, without a paywall or acknowledging that they are paid images. And then there's sort of like a whole bunch of male performers, well, not a whole bunch, 2 very significant male performers that have managed to kind of become mainstream streaming people, Manuel Ferreira and Geordie ENP. And yet at the same time, while there's many women who are involved in the sex industry trying to shift into mainstream streaming, none of them have been as successful as these 2 men. And there's very many kind of rules around how bodies are presented on Twitch and what it counts as adult content and not adult content, and the kind of intricacies of those rules have created a need for various sub-Twitch streaming platforms, which are kind of Twitch-like, but allow various forms of adult content and include gaming as one of the major themes, along with adult content, which can be just even drinking or drug references. And these sites are things like Plex, Storm, Nude Gamer, and Game With Me. So this kind of sort of strange collection of issues and so on kind of point to the kind of strong disciplining of women and women's bodies in these kind of platforms compared to men. But at the same time, kind of show the importance and rise of women as part of gaming culture. So feminist media theorists, Anglosphere ones, like I'm thinking Sarah Barnett-Weiser, have emphasized that one of the kind of powers that new media online culture has given women is this kind of ability to mobilize, to create a sense of visibility, that just to simply announce that they exist and that they're part of things. I mean, it's nothing very revolutionary or even radical in terms of feminism, but even this kind of like presence and taking part threatens hegemonic masculine culture and creates a kind of these moments of everyday misogyny where male fragility kind of articulates and kind of works together to kind of try to bring down some kind of a visibility point. And often the core of this is this idea of attention seeking as a kind of way of disciplining women, that they just are for attention. So I'm getting rapidly to the end here, just thinking final thoughts. So I'm arguing that gendered hierarchies of attention, about what kinds and quality of attention you have the capacity to play, shape how some people think of women's place in gaming and gaming culture. And then I'm acknowledging here that there's a need for further work from me or other people, which looks at these hierarchies of attention, impact on people of color, people non-binary genders, and LGBTQ plus people, as well as other minorities. And there also needs to be further work done to explore this kind of phenomena outside of the Anglosphere and global north. And that's where I've done this gestural image to a rather internet famous Brazilian woman who goes by the name of Fee Gaval. I'm probably missing some accents there. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. My contact details are just there. I'm very happy to continue this dialogue somewhere else if you'd like to. In the meantime, maybe there's some questions.
Tá mudo, Falcão.
Okay, yeah, I was muted. So thank you for the enticing speech, and lecture. Very interesting. We already have a couple of questions. So, Ivan, yeah, thank you.
Okay, so Tom, I will translate Leandro's question to Portuguese. You can read it in the screen if you want. Bom, então a primeira pergunta, gente, que é do Leandro. Eu vou tentar traduzir aqui meio no improviso. Vamos lá. Tom, eu me pergunto sobre os vídeos que não possuíam mulheres jogando, que não mostravam mulheres jogando videogames, mas que ainda assim estavam filtrados como gamer girl. Você acha que isso está relacionado ao uso de hashtags para atrair a atenção de fetiches ligados a hype, né, na falta de um termo melhor, ou ligados a fetiches tradicionais? Nesses vídeos que não tinham mulher jogando, existia algum fator estético ou remotamente conectado ao mesmo tipo de gamer girl ou ao mesmo tipo de imagem da gamer girl, por exemplo, a garota geek, a estudante ou nerd, etc.
So, Leandro, thank you for your question. This is a very insightful question. I can't maybe answer everything about it, but basically, because I didn't pay attention too much to gamer tags that I can remember just off the cuff, but the gist of these kind of videos that I excluded was that they were oriented around, I think, associated fetishes. So one could be, for example, was quite many videos of women with red hair, and also with foot fetish was an element too. But also some were just simply utilizing the same kind of aesthetic appearance of the gamer girl, but she was reading a comic or listening to music or involved in some other kind of teen youth activity, not actually gaming, even though she's described as a gamer.
Bom, então o Tom falou, agradeceu ao Leandro pela pergunta. Ele falou que, por não fazer parte do corpus, né, ele não fez uma análise extensa dessas imagens, então ele não pode falar de cabeça com muita propriedade, mas que ele fala que, mais ou menos na direção que o Leandro pergunta, né, que existe, em alguns casos, existe um uso desse estereótipo, né, desse tropo da gamer girl mais tradicional, mas que em vários casos também você tem esse intercâmbio com a garota geek, né? E ele cita um caso de que é uma garota lendo quadrinhos ao invés de jogar videogame, né? Então, que mais ou menos existe sim essa interação entre a gamer girl e outras questões que não estão ligadas necessariamente à representação de uma mulher jogando videogame, né? Can we go to another question?
Vamos lá.
So, Tom, this is the second question from Daniel. I'm gonna translate it to Portuguese quickly. Bom, então Daniel pergunta: Tom, é possível ver que tipos de jogos as garotas gamers estão jogando existe algum tipo de gênero, console, ou talvez algum título específico que é escolhido nessas cenas?
Okay. Daniel, thank you for your question. This is also like a really important question. My point here would be, often the game is irrelevant for the kind of narrative of the story. Like the game is off screen and it's just something which attention is paid to off screen. But when it is shown, we can see it's a Wii game, right? So we can see the platform. It's like more likely to be a Wii game or something like Dance Dance Revolution. So a game which involves motion or maybe, motion and gesture games. Games which kind of have an invitation to move and to produce a excess of gesture, where you can play them in this kind of really constrained way, and or you can really embody the whole kind of narrative of what you're doing in the play. So you can pretend to play tennis or dance correctly or something like that. Excuse me. There's also like a few times with Team Skeet and with Reality Kings, they actually will case mod a arcade game to give it like a fake name, like Arse Invaders, for example. Obviously that's part of their set design budget, is doing stuff like that. But there's also Team Skeet, when they have people playing video games, they show them playing, I mentioned, a really terrible version of Space Invaders, which is just penises coming down, right? And you shoot the penises with another penis. I don't think that they thought that one out very well. But that was, in several of the games. And even in a pornography story, which is about esports players training for a competition, they're showing this very simple game. So the kind of connection between the kind of games which that are portrayed and the kind of games that they're talking about is not always like spot on. However, if you start to look into the connection between pornography and live streaming, say for example, there are now adult performers who live stream on sex channels. They're really interested in playing the same kind of games that everyone else is playing, because it's that same kind of attention economy thing. Like there's a peak, like Final Fantasy VII gets released as a remake, and suddenly if you go to a site like MiniVids or CamSoda, there's a subsection of that site is now devoted to performers who are cosplaying as Tifa or streaming the game, or both.
Okay, Tom, thanks a lot for the answer. I'm going to translate briefly what you said to the chat. Bom, gente, ele falou então que muitas vezes, né, o Daniel perguntou sobre essa questão de quais jogos são jogados nesses vídeos pornográficos de Gamer Girl, né? E ele fala que muitas vezes é relevante, né? Mas que algumas vezes tem alguns padrões, né? Por exemplo, a questão do Wii, né? Que é um jogo que você incorpora o movimento no jogo. Então, jogos que encorajam você a, de alguma forma, representar através do corpo aquilo que você está jogando. Jogos de dança, por exemplo, né? Ou qualquer jogo que você possa se movimentar e representar algo que a narrativa está abordando. Então tem esse padrão dos jogos que encorajam uma certa incorporação da atividade que está sendo representada no jogo. Ele fala também de algumas curiosidades, né? Então, por exemplo, alguns jogos que, por algum motivo, você pode incorporar ali uma representação pornográfica na tela, né? Aí ele dá um exemplo de uma produção específica que usou uma paródia do Space Invaders, né? Que ao invés de naves eram pênis dos lugares das naves. E fala da conexão agora mais específica, né? Entre pornografia e streaming, né? Ele fala, por exemplo, do caso de atores pornô, alguém comentou até sobre isso no chat, né? Que fazem streaming ao mesmo tempo que estão fazendo pornografia, né? Então junta as duas coisas. E aí ele fala que naturalmente, como ele fala da questão da atenção, né? Que é uma coisa muito importante, a atenção, a economia da atenção no Twitch, que não admite pornografia, é muito parecido. Os jogos que mobilizam essa atenção são muito parecidos, são os mesmos que mobilizam nessas plataformas de streaming pornográfico. E aí esses streamers incorporam uma coisa que também está na pergunta do Leandro, que é a questão do hype, né? Então ele deu o exemplo do Final Fantasy VII, quando é lançado, tem todo o hype em volta do jogo, e aí você vai ter uma streamer fazendo pornografia com cosplay de Tifa Lockhart, né? Que é uma personagem do jogo. Então é mais ou menos nesse sentido que ele vê essa conexão mais específica entre o conteúdo do jogo, né, como na pergunta do Daniel tá ali perguntando, e a prática da representação na pornografia.
Acho que a gente passa para Karina, né?
Karina, eu tenho a pergunta da Juliette aqui, só que eu não vi da Karina, só um segundo.
Então vai aí.
Só um segundo, agora eu perdi.
É essa aqui?
Isso, exatamente.
Okay, I'll try and translate it for you, Tom. This is Juliet. I have accessed the game Cobra Club Dick Pic Simulator because of my research, and I was thinking about this frontier between nudity and pornography. The game was was super controversial because of the male nudity, even though I think male nudity is not as sexualized as the female body. Thoughts on that?
Hey, Juliet, I'm really happy that you're studying that game. It's a really fascinating game. This game is one of several by Robert Yang that explores kind of themes about homosexuality and kind of sexual desire. And my understanding of this game is that you're kind of trying to take the perfect dick pic, and you can customize your penis and pubic hair and so on in this. And this is, I mean, quite a interesting issue. I don't know if you've played this Keanu Reeves cyberpunk game where everyone was discussing the kind of customization of genitalia in that game as well, which obviously at a kind of much more blockbuster, big picture level. But sort of like, I think that the controversy around Cobra Club kind of stems from the kind of exploration of sexual self-expression through the selfie, which is often not something that's really spoken about, right? Like it's sort of like this kind of dick pic is not really something that people find very pleasant or something that should be kind of discussed in this kind of like intimate kind of way, that they're kind of more shocking and nasty or something like that.
Great. And I think this question is actually very interesting, and it kind of represents the question we are all thinking about. So this is Wonder Karina. Obrigado, Karina, pela pergunta. And it's about... Eu vou traduzir em português, tá? Qual é a relação que você identifica entre a representação feminina nesse gênero, né, de gamer porn e o tratamento, né, maltratamento das mulheres nas comunidades gamers. E eu acho que todos nós viemos aqui hoje mais ou menos achando que a gente ia discutir isso, né? Então, it's yours, Tom.
Okay, so this is a very nice pointed question. So I'm going to try to explain it very succinctly, in the sense that what I see is the relationship here is that pornography can show us what is kind of the undercurrent of the kind of the cultural wars about control of gaming communities which have been taking place over the last decade. And that this kind of assertion of kind of hegemonic historical masculinity has been this kind of dominant in game culture has been like eroded by a kind of diversity and this understanding that so many other different kinds of people are playing and enjoying games, and that even different kinds of games can be played and enjoyed by men. And this kind of figure shows this kind of desire to control and continue to dominate and control who plays games and how they're played. But also at a kind of fundamental level, it is gesturing towards that they don't think that women can appreciate games properly because their bodies are essentially wrong, because they haven't got the capacity to feel games in the same way that guys do, because their only way of feeling or enjoying or expressing is through kind of sex or being sexualized. And so they're kind of cast out. They can play games, but they can't play them the way that we can play them, in this kind of aesthetic way where we enjoy them dispassionately and kind of just experience them. It's this kind of beautiful aesthetic experience.
Okay, let me try and translate. É um bocado de coisa, né, minha gente? Então,
eu anotei bem aqui, Falcão, se você quiser.
Então vai lá.
Bom, ele fala da relação entre pornografia e, na verdade, ele fala como a pornografia ajuda a identificar uma certa contracorrente ou uma corrente subterrânea dessa guerra cultural que a gente vê sendo travada na cultura gamer, né? Que seria justamente a ideia de que a masculinidade que foi construída ali de um ponto de vista histórico na cultura gamer, ela de alguma forma está sendo desafiada, né? Está sendo questionada por alguns lapsos de diversidade, né? E que isso resulta em uma certa insegurança, né? Por parte dos jogadores convencionais, que são os homens brancos e ricos e etc., né? E aí tem uma ideia aí na fala do Tom de que esse tipo de figura, né, ou seja, a gamer girl como representação, ela incorpora um certo desejo de dominar e de controlar o jogo feminino, né?
Disciplinar, né?
Disciplinar, exatamente. E o que ele fala também que é interessante, né, que é um desejo de dominar não só a mulher, mas o modo como elas jogam, né? Porque supostamente elas não sabem jogar o jogo direito, entre aspas, né? Ele fala que gesticula em direção ao fato de que mulheres não sabem jogar, né? Não sabem no sentido de elas não foram biologicamente feitas para aproveitar o jogo. Aí volta nessa questão do determinismo biológico, né, que é muito incorporado.
O corpo delas, é o que ele diz, né? O corpo da mulher, para o gamer, o corpo da mulher tá errado. Ele não deixa que a mulher saiba jogar como assim, é uma barreira estética, né? Estética no sentido de sentir mesmo. Então a mulher não consegue sentir o jogo como o homem consegue. A mulher só conseguiria mesmo sentir, e aí é isso que, né, a tradução quase que literal, sentir o sexo. Então, por isso, muitas dessas imagens carregam esse tipo de diálogo, né? Eu acho sensacional, na verdade, assim, a discussão. Deixa eu ver o que mais tem aqui.
Tem uma pergunta do Kenneth aqui, e depois a gente pode, de repente, ir para a segunda pergunta do Leandro. So, Tom, this is a question from Kenneth. I'll try to translate it to Portuguese. O Kenneth pergunta: bom, Tom, até que ponto essas representações, né, influenciam a percepção de visões sobre mulheres em geral, né? Por exemplo, em contextos familiares, né, contextos de trabalho, ou de pessoas, eu entendi que ele quis dizer no sentido de pessoas estranhas, né, como você percebe outras mulheres, né, que você não conhece. Ok, Tom, it's yours.
Okay, so I can't really speak to how these matters might directly influence individuals, but more generally, right? So these same kind of themes are used to justify harassment behavior against women that are kind of visible in online games or visible on streams and so on. And that the only reason why they want to be in the game and getting attention is because they want something from men. That they're there for the wrong kind of reasons. And this could extend even to the presence of women in the gaming industry in a variety of roles. And even going back to, like there's decades and decades of discussion about the use of booth babes in demonstration cultures and in kind of commercial kind of conferences around video games and video games technologies, and the use of women in advertising in video game magazines, even dating back to the 70s. And that people see this kind of this appearance of a woman in this context there's got to be something wrong, because there shouldn't be a woman there. So why is a woman appearing? It's to distract us from the fact that this game is shit, that this console is shit. They're gonna try and wow us with some attractive woman, and so it's like a canary in the coal mine, because they shouldn't be there anyway. So now that they're here, something's got to be wrong. So there's this kind of like really weird kind of double bind where people are extra anti-woman because they feel that their anti-womanness, this belief, is justified by the history of women's inclusion in gaming through these kind of means as promoters, as demonstrators.
Thank you, Tom, for your answer. I'm going to translate it. Bom, então ele responde ao Kenneth, que fala que a gente não pode necessariamente fazer diagnósticos mais individuais, né, de que como essas imagens influenciam pessoas específicas, né, ou indivíduos, mas ele quer fazer uma leitura do fenômeno como uma espécie de forma de justificar certos padrões, né, de violência, por exemplo. Né? E ele fala, por exemplo, da ideia de que as mulheres estão num determinado lugar, no caso, aí numa representação ligada ao jogo, né? Aí ele vai falar das revistas de games dos anos 80, dos anos 90, que elas estariam lá, quando elas estão, né, seriam pelas razões erradas, né? Então, por exemplo, né, ele fala da discussão sobre as buff babes, né, que é essa prática de você colocar uma mulher, geralmente vestida com decote, de maneira provocante, nessas exposições, né, tipo E3, né, nas estandes, de eventos promocionais ligados aos games, né? E que isso também que isso acontece também nas revistas de jogos antigos, né, dos anos 80, 90, e que existe uma certa crença de que a mulher está ali para desviar a atenção, né? Porque, bom, esse lugar não é um lugar para mulheres, né? Então, se elas estão ali, qual é a função delas, né? Seria para distrair a atenção do jogador em direção a algo para distrair o jogador do verdadeiro fato que está sendo escondido. É porque o jogo não é tão bom, né? O console é meio ruim, né? Ou o console é meio merda, nas palavras do Tom, né? Não são minhas. E essa ideia, justamente, né? É o que ele está enxergando aí na resposta para o Kenneth como algo que talvez a gente pode identificar numa cultura do olhar masculino mais geral, né? Então seria isso. E aí a gente já passa para outros contextos fora os videogames, né?
Tem esse comentário da Karina aqui que eu acho que vale a pena também, ó. So there's this comment, which I think it deserves another commentary. A Karina diz, parece que os jogos focados no movimento, ao invés de focados no pensamento crítico, são mais adequados para as mulheres, para a representação nesse tipo de pornografia. I brought this comment up because the first installment you sent me of Brazilians engaging in this type of pornography was exactly a representation of this comment, because it was a channel. I don't quite recall the name of the channel. Yeah, I'll remember.
Let me have a quick search.
Yeah, I'll remember in a bit. Camera Hot. Yeah, Camera Hot.
Yeah, so, Camera Hot.
Yeah, there was this. It was this video of a live event from Camera Hot where 3 women were playing FIFA, right? So there's especially in Brazil, there's this connection between sports game and pornography. What do you think of that? Do you see any correlations?
Well, I thought it was quite interesting because there's been remarkably little sports-related themed porn. Apart from this, there'd been some that was kind of coming out of, I guess, the US-focused commentary space around baseball and their version of football. Right, so it was kind of like sitting in this kind of softcore kind of space, and kind of maybe like in a Sports Illustrated kind of level. But this was like much more explicitly cam kind of aesthetic, and them kind of talking about football as well. So, I mean, it plugs into what I'd understand as a kind of a normalcy around like what's kind of maybe the most interesting games for the widest number of that men at any particular time. Like, I'm not sure obviously there's a wide variety of games getting played in Brazil, but like there's my kind of innate understanding that it's not researched, but it's kind of just guessing, is that at least in Europe and in Australia, my perception is that there's like people who play games, and then there's people who play FIFA, if you know what I mean. And while those sets intersect with each other, there's some people who, for them, playing video games is playing FIFA. Like they're synonymous with each other, where other people have like a more varied palette about what they're willing to play, even if they prefer or enjoy FIFA, that it won't just be that. And so I think that it kind of speaks to a wider audience in a way, or a slightly different audience than, say, something like Final Fantasy VII Remake or Last of Us 2 or something like that, or The Witcher 3 speaks to, which is sort of much more conspicuously a particular subsection of culture. Whereas anyone can enjoy football. And this is like one of the reasons why it's so popular, and there's been so much investment in the kind of commentary and crowd technology, is that you can even start to enjoy to watch it in a way. I mean, some people say the commentary is better than you get on a real football game.
Então, várias coisas. Eu vi agora esse comentário do Ian, inclusive, em que ele fala uma coisa muito próxima do que o Tom fala, né? Ele começa dizendo que existe pouca pornografia, na verdade, ele viu pouca pornografia vinda de esportes, né? Que a maioria do conteúdo pornográfico relativo a videogames, ele está associado a outro tipo de videogame. Salvo quando se fala dos Estados Unidos, porque se fala um pouco, e ele assim sublinha isso, né? Do beisebol e do futebol americano, em um esquema meio softcore porn, né? Uma coisa meio como a Band transmitia nos anos 90, por exemplo. Mas que esse sketch, por falta de uma palavra melhor, né? Ou essa live do Câmera Hot era uma coisa muito mais voltada para essa cultura cam, né? Ou seja, tem gente trabalhando com essa ideia de camming mesmo. Inclusive tem uma figura daqui do Brasil, esqueci o nome dela, vou lembrar, que é doutora em sociologia, terminou com uma tese exatamente sobre isso. E, enfim, voltado para a cultura cam, e que assim, se relacionava muito mais com futebol, né? E eu gosto dessa. Ele fala assim. E isso meio que representa uma normalidade, normalcy, considerando a dimensão cultural. Eu gosto da ideia muito. E aí ele faz uma distinção, lógico, porque ele fala de que como assim, existem dois tipos de consumidores, né? O cara que consome FIFA e o cara que consome videogames. E que isso representaria um tipo de audiência distinta. E aí eu vou só fazer um comentário. I'm gonna make a comment myself on this, because the point for me is I would normally agree with you on the discussion about the size of the audience. But as I told you at the time, I think there's this particular relationship in Brazil with sports and with, especially with soccer, with football, that speaks to me when I saw this video. So I agree, it's two different publics, but we also have the game pornography on, European themes, mostly medieval fantasy and Star Wars pop culture related video games pornography. But in Brazil, the soccer culture is super relevant, culturally relevant. So so I guess that's it. It's you cannot. I like the idea of normalcy, or cultural normalcy you bring about, because it really represents what I think are going on, what I think is going on in those videos. They're playing soccer and UFC. There's another video in which they are playing UFC. Uh, they're not playing that because it's a super popular game. They're playing that because, well, it is because of the popularity, but specifically, or at least it seems to me, because of the popularity of these sports in Brazil. So it's a very localized thing, if you know what I mean.
So, I mean, UFC is like a very fascinating game in this respect anyway, because it's kind of touching on pornography in several levels. Because even the game itself makes use of uh, celebrity performers as ring girls to hold up the sign with which number round it is or whatever. And they're doing motion cap software stuff with them and their bodies for a 10 or 15-second segment in between rounds, where people can go, oh, that motion capture is really based on person X or person Y, you know, that you've seen in Playboy or whatever.
Cool. Ivan, do you want to?
Ok. O Leandro falou que está saindo, né? Mas se ele estiver aí ainda, ele tinha uma outra pergunta. So Tom Leandro has a follow-up question about Daniel's questions, which was about the videos that didn't have women represented in them.
Data collection. Yeah.
Yeah. So just trying to find it. So here it is. So I'm going to translate his question really quick. Bom, então a pergunta do Leandro sobre essa questão que o Daniel levantou sobre os vídeos que não apresentam mulheres, né, jogando, ou melhor, que apresentam mulheres que não estão jogando videogames, né? Ele pergunta ao Tom: você acha que dentro desses poucos jogos que parecem indicar e eu acho que eu me perdi aqui na pergunta, não sei se Falcão me ajuda. Você acha que os poucos jogos que aparentam indicar, tanto quanto as mulheres, os gamers girls, a atenção das gamers girls, deveriam ser... tá muito complicado, me ajuda aí, Falcão. Vou precisar de um Google Translator.
Calma aí. Você acha que os poucos jogos que aparentam indicar tão bem que as mulheres gamers, que a atenção das mulheres gamers devia estar apenas no cenário gaming casual, eu acho que é por aí, né?
Sim, é isso. Eu confirmei do Translator.
Boa. Go on, man.
Okay, Leandro, this is a really great question again. So actually, one of the things which is really interesting is that casual games don't really feature in this kind of gamer girl, porn, mainstream heterosexual kind of at all. There's one game which features a lot, and that's Pokemon Go. But it's done in a kind of completely different scenario, where it's kind of some kind of got to fuck 'em all kind of scenario, where they have various woman porn stars dressed as various Pokemon, and guys go and catch them, and etc. Like this is like a kind of, actually that was some of the videos which I eliminated from the selection, were ones which had kind of, were mimicking the kind of mechanics of the game, but weren't actually showing women playing games. So I think there was 3 different videos which were Pokemon Go videos. And that was probably, I mean, they were really widely circulated. There's one with that guy, Geordie ENP, and another with this sort of like gamer girl porn stalwart kind of guy, Sean Lawless, as well, which seems to, he just constantly appears in it as this kind of 40-year-oldish guy that is somehow a stepbrother of, you know, just a weird kind of, but anyway, he appears. So there's not really much casual gaming at all in this part of the kind of whole segment of different bits of, you know, the intersection of porn and games. But, you know, there's a lot of, I guess, adult casual games and emerging on different platforms now too. And I mean, in some respects, maybe they've been around for a while, but these aren't the ones which feature in this kind of pornography.
Bom, então, traduzindo aqui rapidinho a resposta do Tom, ele fala para o Leandro, né, sobre essa questão dos jogos casuais, que é uma coisa interessante, que não existe muita, ou quase nenhuma, na verdade, representação pornográfica usando jogos casuais, né, e que ele tem uma exceção para isso, que é o Pokémon Go, né, ele fala que inclusive é um tipo específico de representação em que as mulheres estão vestidas de Pokémon, né? E que os homens estão ali para caçar as mulheres, né? Então tem essa interação com a mecânica do jogo servindo como mote para uma representação pornográfica. E ele fecha falando justamente dessa questão, né? Enfatizando que não tem esses jogos casuais sendo representados do ponto de vista narrativo no discurso pornográfico, né, na imagem, etc., mas que existe esse mercado emergente de jogos casuais adultos, né, que aparecem nas plataformas, né, e etc., e que isso, de alguma forma, obviamente, vai trazer à tona algumas questões da representação de games e pornografia, né, mas que estariam em outro âmbito, né.
Thank you, Ivan. And I think that brings it to an end. I'm very thankful for you, Tom, for being here with us. It's what, I mean, midnight and yeah, half hour past midnight there, something like that. Yeah, so gente, eu queria agradecer imensamente ao Tom, porque é isso, né? A gente tá num diferente fuso horário difícil e ele tá aí com a gente no trabalho, na universidade lá. Então é isso, são 00:30 lá. It was very enlightening. It was great discussing your research, man. I'm sure we'll have many things to talk about this. Following up your presentation here, I have a bunch of questions I would like to make, but I won't take up your time anymore. Thank you so much, and I'll pass the mic to Ivan, and then you can say goodbye to everyone and finally get to sleep, even though I know you don't sleep, because every time I talk to you, you promptly answers me. So yeah, Ivan.
So thank you a lot, Tom, for your amazing research speech. It was really, really interesting. The chat was very, very interested as well to ask questions and discuss. there was a bit of a discussion happening on the side in the chat, so it was very interesting to follow that also as well. Então, só agradecer ao chat, pessoal. Muito obrigado aí pelas perguntas, pela interação, pela discussão que rolou paralelamente. And I give the word to Tom for his closing remarks.
Professor Falcano, thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. It was very, very nice to have this opportunity to speak with the good people. And I really appreciate Professor Musa and yourself taking the time to translate between colleagues in Brazil and myself some of the pressing questions and issues. I really enjoyed the precise and insightful questions that I had tonight, and it was a great pleasure and to be here. I am really very flattered to have had this opportunity. And please, colleagues, if you have interest in my research, and reach out, and I would love to have a chance to discuss with you in the future.
Então, minha gente, ele, enfim, disse que está muito feliz de estar aqui falando com a gente, que agradeceu a gente pela tradução e disse, por fim, que se vocês quiserem, se vocês tiverem algum interesse na pesquisa dele, quiserem bater um papo, por favor, mandem e-mail. E é isso, né, minha gente? No mais, eu quero fazer das palavras de Ivan as minhas, então muito obrigado a vocês que estão aí. Eu sei que não é que esse horário das 6 horas não é nenhum horário, né, super favorável, porque tá todo mundo às vezes chegando em casa, às vezes não jantou, enfim, esse horário de fim de dia. Então, obrigado a todos que estão aí. É isso, sigam nós aí e discutam com a gente tá aqui para estabelecer esse diálogo mesmo. Valeu demais e até, bom, acho que na semana que vem a gente deve retomar com o
Games of Empire.
O Reset, né, discutindo Games of Empire, e dia 1º de março a gente volta com a Speaker Series, porque a gente vai ter o Ergin Bulut, né, que é um scholar turco que vai falar com a gente sobre o livro dele, que é o A Precarious Game, que saiu recentemente, saiu no ano passado. Ok? Então, Tom, please stay there. I'm gonna end the broadcast and we'll talk soon. Valeu, pessoal. É isso aí.